Welcome to Orientalistics, podcast on language, culture, and religion. In this episode, I would like to explore the historical trajectory of writing, specifically the transition into the era of printing. Of course, subsequent episodes will revisit early historical document in alphabetic form and the history of syllabic alphabets. However, for today's discourse, I would like to focus on Johannes Gutenberg, an individual of profound significance, recognized for effecting a transformative revolution in the field of printing. In fact, this episode is driven from one of my lectures in German on the era of printing, and I just translated it into English to make it available for my English audience. Actually, I've named today's episode the Gutenberg Galaxy, and this name is drawing an inspiration from the 1962 book written by Marshall McLuhan. Within its pages, McLuhan explores the profound effects of mass media with a keen focus on the transformative influence of printing press on European culture and human consciousness. Well, it is really not an exaggeration if we would say that Johannes Gutenberg is considered the inventor of printing. His great achievements were, above all, in combining previously known techniques and in this way developing an expensive and inexpensive and fast printing process. Thanks to the movable type developed by Gutenberg and the improvement of printing press, it was possible for the first time in the history of printing in Europe to print large quantities of pages at very low costs. Considering the fact that printing a book in Middle Ages up to 15th century was very expensive. For example, the first Bible that has been published in Germany was so expensive that the printing house took a farmland with all the accessories as the enumeration for the printing this Bible, and the municipality of the city chained this precious Bible with a golden chain to his throne so that it would be not stolen away. Well, the people swapped farms, houses, and precious things to just have a book. So you can imagine how expensive printing was in that age. Yet, the innovation of Johannes Gutenberg made it possible to achieve a previously unknown distribution of many printed publications. Gutenberg's printing technology was used well into 20th century until the so-called photomechanical techniques or phototypesetting. And above all, digital printing largely, of course, replaced Gutenberg's printing processes. Nevertheless, the present is still influenced by Johannes Gutenberg in many ways. Without his invention, the reformers of the Protestant Church would have had a much more difficult time spreading their teachings and their ideologies and doctrines. Do not forget that the 16th century Reformation in Europe, particularly in Germany and elsewhere, was very indebted to the fast printing technology that was invented just a few decades before the proclamation of Protestantism in Europe. We talked about the movable type. Without these techniques, pamphlets and newspapers, which for a long time shaped the public as mass media and significantly influenced politics and society, would have been actually unthinkable. Marshall McLuhan even spoke of Johannesburg's galaxy in his book in 1962 to emphasize that the world we live in is significantly shaped by Johannes Gutenberg and his inventions. So without the book, modern society would be in the form it is, in fact, unthinkable. Johannes Gutenberg is hence considered as one of the outstanding founding fathers of modernity. Well, as great as Johannes Gutenberg's importance is, his life, like the life of lots of other important figures in antique and classical era, remains largely obscure. To this day, the exact year of his birth even is unknown. It is dated by biographers between 1394 and 1405. Scientific facts, however, did not always play a role in dating the birth. In particular, the well-known determination of the year 1400 is due less to the tangible evidence than to the fact that Johannes Gutenberg Society wanted to celebrate his 500th birthday in 1900. There is more clarity regarding the parents of Johannes Gutenberg. His father was a rich Mainz patrician from the city of Mainz and merchant called Friedrich Gensfleisch. And Friedrich Gensfleisch married actually his second wife, who was to become Johannes Gutenberg's mother. Her name was Else, born as Wirich. There are also well-founded assumptions about the place of birth of Johannes Gutenberg. The little Johannes Gutenberg was probably born in his parents' house, so-called Hof zum Gutenberg, on Schussestraße in the city of Mainz in the Old Town. Probably in the year 1420, meanwhile, adult Johannes, following the fashion of the time, adopted the name of his birthplace and his parents' property as his personal name. From then on, Johannes Gutenberg was the name with which the future printer would become famous. As the son of a rich patrician, Johannes Gutenberg certainly enjoyed a good education and was perhaps even able to study. There are some evidences that he went to University of Erfurt, because there are some nicknames that refer to the student that enrolled in the University of Erfurt in the state of Thuringen in German. And there are evidences that might recall the name of Johannes Gutenberg. On the other hand, there is also a lack of clear evidence and sources for this attending the university. However, his later work as a printer and publisher makes it seem very likely that Johannes Gutenberg must have enjoyed an excellent scholastic education. After all, he not only published Latin writings, but also dictionaries and grammars, and the publication of which, in fact, required in-depth linguistic training skills, without which a publisher would be almost unable to actually print works as such. Historical annals reveal that Johannes Gutenberg stayed in Strasbourg between 1434 and 1444. Here, he worked as a very busy businessman. The signs of his later work as a printer and publisher can already be seen now in these years. In 1439, he published the pilgrimage mirrors of the Aachen pilgrimage from a lead tin alloy, although these metal plates were not intended to serve as printing plates. It is quite possible that Johannes Gutenberg was able to gain a lot of knowledge and extensive experience while casting these, in fact, devotional objects, which he use, in fact, in later productions of movable type from different metal alloys that he benefited from. Johannes Gutenberg only appeared as a printer in the narrower sense after his return to his hometown of Mainz. Here, several loan agreements and legal contracts in the middle of the 15th century provide evidence of the establishment of the first printing workshop made by Johannes Gutenberg. In 1450, the time had finally come. Johannes Gutenberg printed the first, in fact, board sheets and books. On the one hand, countless small prints, dictionaries, and grammars appeared from his workshop in the years that followed. And on the other hand, Johannes Gutenberg started very early on typesetting the Latin Bible, known as Johannes Gutenberg Bible, or Bible von Johannes Gutenberg. And this was actually a matter that made him very famous. Many prints were financed by the Mainz merchant and lawyer Johannes Faust. But in 1455, there was a bitter dispute between the printer Johannes Gutenberg and the financier Faust, which put Johannes Gutenberg's economic existence in grave danger. The story is this. Faust, as a respectable lawyer and merchant, had given Gutenberg several times an interest-free but, in fact, earmarked loan, and there were about, I think, 400 up to 1,600 guilders of gold, and the money was actually had to be used to print the Bible. When the lawyer Faust discovered that Johannes Gutenberg, incognito, was also using the loaned money for other printings, the lawyer demanded the money back or claimed the tools and equipment that he had received as, in fact, collateral. Hence, Johannes Gutenberg lost in the court disputes. In order to pay off the debts, he had to close down his workshop. But Johannes Gutenberg was not discouraged by this result. Well, and it started all over again in his parents' house. There, Gutenberg ran the printing company until his death in 1468. Many of the innovations that Johannes Gutenberg used for the new printing technology were actually known long before him and before his era already in China, though his great achievement lies in having improved and merged these techniques together. Since both books and printing existed before Johannes Gutenberg, it has become common practice to, in fact, correctly call Johannes Gutenberg not the inventor of printing, but rather the inventor of the movable type, which is in no way, in fact, less valuable and in no way diminishes his importance for further development of the printing technology. Printing processes existed even before Johannes Gutenberg, as I mentioned. For example, wood printing in particular was widespread and most probably came from China as a technique. Though the crucial thing was that a separate printing plate had to be made for each single page. The production of the woodcuts was time-consuming and expensive, but at the same time, the number of the prints remained very small due to the wear and tear of the materials. At the core of Johannes Gutenberg's invention stays, in fact, this concept of the movable type. A printing form was cast for each letter, the so-called letters, and these letters made from a very robust alloy of tin, lead, and bismuth. Using an angle hook, Johannes Gutenberg put the letters together to form a line. Several lines created the typeface of a text. The print template created in this way would now be used for printing, and the letters could be reused, and that's the most important innovation from Johannes Gutenberg. Corrections in the typesetting and text were hence now easily possible, and the movable type also opened up many possibilities in typography. It means in the way the text is presented. More importantly, Johannes Gutenberg introduced many innovations and improvement in printing processes and in terms of printing ink. He created also new fonts and design rules. As great as Johannes Gutenberg's importance is, his life remains largely obscure to this day. The exact year of his birth, as I mentioned before, is unknown. It is dated by biographers between 1394 and 1405. Well, scientific facts do not always play a very role in dating the birth of the Johannes Gutenberg. That's why in the well-known determination of the year 400, they call actually the year of 900, the 500 births of the Johannes Gutenberg, as I mentioned, and that was made by the Johannes Gutenberg Society. Something is also mention worthy, and that is the first printing is that Johannes Gutenberg actually developed were based heavily on the medieval manuscripts that had been painstakingly created in monasteries and Catholic convents. Many of early Johannes Gutenberg's prints even leave space for subsequent hand drawings, decorations, ornaments, and illuminations. But Johannes Gutenberg soon realized that book printing was subject to its own rules in its processes. Hence, he developed his own letter forms, which can be seen as forerunners of well-known so-called Frakturlettern or fracture fonts. These letters differ significantly from the manuscripts, but at the same time made them easy to read. For this reason, Gutenberg was not content with creating 26 letters for 26 letters in Latin or German language. Rather, he developed more than 200 letter shapes in order to have a suitable shape available as needed for different fonts. On the other hand, Johannes Gutenberg dealt intensively with the question of margins and spacing, which was really unknown up to that point in 16th century. Both with regard to the relationship of text and page, and also with regards to letters to another. And that is a very innovative approach that, in fact, Johannes Gutenberg consciously has undertaken. With the exaggeration, Gutenberg can therefore be considered not only as the inventor of the movable type, but also as the first typographer. Unfortunately, his thoughts and ideas on this area are not explicitly recorded. However, many rules can be derived from the work, which to this day largely determine the design of books and publication of all kinds in the old world, in Europe and elsewhere in the world. Johannes Gutenberg did not only pursue the goal of making a text harmonious and beautiful, he also was particularly guided by the desire to achieve great legibility and readability of the text, and which makes actually Johannes Gutenberg's Bible and the further printings of him very, very precious. Overall, the impact that Johannes Gutenberg had was huge. Hence, it is not an exaggeration when we refer to a printing era as Johannes Gutenberg's galaxy. Books and newspapers whose production followed Gutenberg's techniques were used up to 20th century, and they really shaped modern society like no other medium. Johannes Gutenberg is rightly considered as one of the most important individuals in the history of the intellectuality. The swift dissemination of information and the democratization of knowledge catalyzed by printing transformed communication, laying the foundation for modern communication society. Recognized as a key modernizer, Johannes Gutenberg's invention is considered as the, in fact, harbinger of the modern era, earning him the title of Man of the Millennium in 1999 by the American TV A&E network.